Let me be clear. Donald Trump is using our service members as political props and as pawns in his illegal effort to militarize our nation's cities. The Trump administration is following a playbook: cause chaos, create fear and confusion, make it seem like peaceful protesters are a mob by firing gas pellets and tear gas canisters at them. Why? To create the pretext for invoking the Insurrection Act.
Well, I'd do it if it was necessary. So far it hasn't been necessary, but we have an Insurrection Act for a reason. If I had to enact it, I'd do that. If people were being killed and courts were holding us up, or governors or mayors were holding us up, sure, I'd do that. I mean, I want to make sure that people aren't killed.
President Trump warns he could deploy U.S. troops inside American cities, invoking a 200-year-old law if he thinks it's necessary. President Donald Trump told reporters on Monday, October 6, that he is prepared to invoke the Insurrection Act to send more federal forces into Democratic-run cities, a move he says would be justified if local leaders or courts stand in the way of restoring order. The threat comes after a federal judge in Oregon temporarily blocked a National Guard deployment to Portland, even as another judge in Illinois allowed a similar federalized deployment to proceed in Chicago for now. Both Portland and Chicago have seen increased federal deployments tied to the administration's mass deportation operations and security actions around immigration processing facilities, actions that have in turn sparked protests. We have an Insurrection Act for a reason. If I had to enact it, I would do that, the president said in the Oval Office, adding that he would act if people were being killed and courts were holding us up, or governors or mayors were holding us up.
We're going to make Chicago really great again, and we're going to stop this crime. Then we're going to go to another one, and we're going to go city by city. We're going to have safe cities. And it was so great that we started with our nation's capital, one of the worst. I mean, so many people, every week somebody was killed. They'd come from Iowa, they'd come from Indiana, they want to see the Jefferson Memorial, the Lincoln Memorial. They want to see something, and they'd get shot. And you'd call their parents, "I'm sorry, but your son is dead." And they go, "What do you mean he's dead?" Came to Washington, D.C. Not anymore. That's not happening anymore. We have a safe place. We have a safe capital. It's as safe as we have probably almost just about in the country. And if you look back 6 months ago, 7 months ago, this was a death trap. You look back during the Biden, I mean, what they did, how badly they managed things. And almost all of these cities, most of these cities are Democrat run. And we don't care, Democrat, Republican, we're going to make them safe. So we have to save Chicago. It's very important. And you can't have a governor getting up and saying it's good when 11 people were shot over a weekend. What?
The Insurrection Act, under what conditions or terms would you?
Well, I'd do it if it was necessary. So far it hasn't been necessary, but we have an Insurrection Act for a reason. If I had to enact it, I'd do that. If people were being killed and courts were holding us up, or governors or mayors were holding us up, sure, I'd do that. I mean, I want to make sure that people aren't killed. We have to make sure that our cities are safe. And it's turning out, and we started with D.C., it's been so successful. Think of it. People wouldn't go to restaurants. The restaurants were closing. We were losing a lot of restaurants, as you all know. And now restaurants are opening and they're thriving. And I went 2 weeks ago and it was great. I'm going to go again. I felt very safe, very safe. Forgetting about guards and Secret Service, and I would have gone, it would have been very safe. D.C. is a great, and look at the cleanliness of D.C. Look at how it's clean. You don't have tents all over the place. We had parks where you couldn't even walk through the park. You had people from tents, and they were violent people. Some of these people were violent people. We have a great, safe capital again, and if you look at it in 6 months from now, it'll be the most beautiful anywhere in the world. It's being cleaned. The graffiti's all gone now. The tents are all gone. We have a capital that you can be proud of, but it'll only get better with time.
Trump's comments about the centuries-old Insurrection Act came just minutes after Pritzker warned that Trump was creating a premeditated escalation of violence as a pretext to invoke the emergency powers.
The president has federalized 300 Illinois National Guard military troops and hundreds of National Guard members from Texas, and he has ordered them to activate for duty in Illinois. I have called upon Governor Abbott to immediately withdraw his support for this decision and refuse to allow Texas National Guard members to be used in this way. Let me be clear. Donald Trump is using our service members as political props and as pawns in his illegal effort to militarize our nation's cities. I want to thank Attorney General Kwame Raoul and his staff, along with my general counsel, Ann Spillane, and our excellent governor's office legal team for working tirelessly for weeks now to prepare federal lawsuits in anticipation of this unconstitutional invasion of Illinois by the federal government. For weeks now, Donald Trump, Kristi Noem, and Gregory Bovino have brought their militarized CBP and ICE agents to the streets of Chicago to cause violence and chaos in this city. They need to stop inciting our city's residents. Since the beginning of this invasion, families have been snatched up off the streets or removed from their homes, zip-tied and detained for hours, including especially U.S. citizens and legal residents of our state. And in the words of CBP Chief Patrol Agent Greg Bovino, they're being chosen by how they look. Peaceful protesters have been hit with tear gas and shot with rubber bullets. Journalists simply reporting the facts on the ground have been targeted and arrested. The facts on the ground have been targeted and arrested. U.S. citizens, including children, have been traumatized and detained. This escalation of violence is targeted and intentional and premeditated. The Trump administration is following a playbook: cause chaos, create fear and confusion, make it seem like peaceful protesters are a mob by firing gas pellets and tear gas canisters at them. Why? To create the pretext for invoking the Insurrection Act so that he can send military troops to our city. He wants to justify and normalize the presence of armed soldiers under his direct command. I want to take you through the steps that he's taken to follow the playbook and show how it is playing out real time here in Illinois. When I first heard reports of Trump's plan to send armed military troops into our streets, more than 100 elected officials, business leaders, clergy, law enforcement, educators, and community organizations gathered on August 25th to send an unequivocal message to Donald Trump. We don't want troops on the streets of Chicago. There was never an insurrection or an invasion on the ground that justified the deployment of the military to our American city. We stood out there on a beautiful day at River Point Park to make that point. Donald Trump's deranged depiction of Chicago as a hellhole, a war zone, and the worst and most dangerous city in the world was just complete BS. He clearly has decided to declare war on a great American city that has the lowest homicide rate in 60 years, in a state that has record employment and near record tourism. And he's done it for some unspoken reason. I spent the days and weeks following that out and about in our communities, in Bronzeville, in Austin, in Little Village, Berwyn, South Shore, and others, walking and talking and listening to real Chicagoans and local business owners, something Donald Trump, Greg Bovino, Tom Homan, and Kristi Noem have never bothered to do. No insurrections, no invasions. The folks in the neighborhoods do not want armed troops marching in their streets. When it comes to public safety, they want civilian law enforcement when they need them. and jobs and after-school programs for kids in the neighborhoods. They do not want Donald Trump to occupy their communities.
Trump over the weekend authorized deployment of 700 National Guard members to Chicago, despite the opposition of elected Democratic leaders, including Pritzker and the city's mayor.